Hey everyone, great to have you on here. I'm excited for the agenda tonight. It's really strong, but before that, couple exclusive announcements for the DGL live people. So the first one is that some of you might know that we've been doing an event with Dave Gerhardt live. One time we just chatted about what we're seeing for trends, and the next time we did some Q&A, which was cool. And so we're actually going to make that into a monthly content pillar. And so people that want to attend, also UK, EU, time friendly. It's the first Thursday of every month starting. The first one will be on May 6th, Thursday, May 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern. We'll drop, for the listeners, we'll drop a link in the show notes. Maybe we have a link that we can send for the DGLers that are live, but that's going on. It's recurring. So if you sign up for one, you'll be in there, and you can show up to the ones that you can make. And if you can't make it, it'll still be on your calendar, so you'll know that it's happening. So getting a little bit more efficient in our processes here. So that's the first one. The second one was that I had the pleasure today of doing a actual in-person interview with my friends from Typeform. They've been putting on some really awesome content. The last one they did was with pre-COVID with Rand Fishkin. If you haven't seen it, it was a really awesome episode. And so that kind of started to spark some inspiration of starting to do some more like live filming stuff. And so stay tuned for that. Maybe we'll have like some video interviews potentially when it's safe and acceptable. Would love to get out there and do some events in different cities and bring some people together naturally, safely, and when everyone feels comfortable to do that. So I'm excited. I'm ready to go. I'm going to kick off with the first topic here, which I think is the main event. And so I was talking to somebody the other week, and somehow the conversation, I talk about marketing a lot, somehow the conversation got onto the point of like, but companies don't actually create demand. And they asked me, why don't they do it? And I thought about it for a second. And then I said, because they're not incentivized to do it. And so because their attribution models and their KPIs actually incentivize them to do the opposite of create demand. And so I'd like to talk through just for the basics, so people understand where we're coming from, and then we'll get into the details. So the basics are, there's two demand strategies. There's captured demand, people that are looking to buy what you sell, that are solution aware, that are looking to buy something, very small portion of the market. Like, that's captured demand. You got to get those people, and you got to figure out. And there's a massive amount of people that are not in a buying cycle, where the appropriate strategy would be to create demand, to do marketing, to educate people so that they have an affinity to your company, your category, your product, your narrative, so that when they move into a buying cycle, they consider you first. And if you do it well enough, they don't even consider anybody else. It's okay, it's time to buy this company, let's go do it. And so the reason that companies aren't incentivized to create demand is because it's further up in the funnel and it's difficult to measure. And so they use awareness channels where they should be creating demand in lead gen mode in order to facilitate attribution. And so they collect people that they're using a captured demand strategy to get people that are not interested in buying, and then try and do sales to people that don't want to buy, all so that they can track it. And that's where we are right now. And so when we think about how companies could kind of move away from this thing, the first thing that comes to mind is on attribution. And so I'm looking at things right now that are working the best for us. The company, and everyone will look at this and they'll know what I'm saying. The companies that are winning are creating demand. You see them around doing stuff. You hear their name. People are talking about them in the market. They're not over there winning, spending $1 million a month on Google search ads. That's not how companies are winning right now. They're winning because they're present in awareness channels and doing things that are appropriate to do in awareness channels. And so the things that I think about that work the best right now a podcast. Organic social on LinkedIn works so well. A lot of companies don't do it because it's difficult to measure. Our paid social strategy, which I'm going to go deep into later in this episode, and the way that we do it is difficult to measure directly to revenue, which is why companies will never try it. Influencer marketing, we saw a post on it today. They were doing influencer marketing on Twitter. The person came, left Twitter, came inbound through Google, Visible tags it as organic search. And most companies are going to sit there and say, well, guess we should keep doing more organic search. Let's do more SEO. Forget this influencer thing. And so all of these things, because they're difficult to track and attribute to revenue, companies don't incentivize their marketers to even try them. And if they did want to try them, they don't set up an environment where they could even have a shot of working. And so for the people that are listening that are manager level that want to do this, maybe send this clip to your CMO. And for the CMOs that are listening to this that want to empower their team to do things that work the best right now, you got to change some of the things that I just talked about. And so I'll kind of leave it at that. This one, actually, I would love to kind of pivot off the agenda. And if there's a question or two, would love to field them right now, because I imagine that there's people in the audience that have struggled with this either right now or in the past or whatever. Would be happy to kind of go a little bit deeper there for someone.
I'm gonna call out for some questions for people to formulate.
Yeah. Let some people marinate over it, and I'll just kind of keep cruising here.
But I have a question for you on this topic, though, maybe to spark some discussion.
You always come through when we need you.
I think another component of this is also around how you think about creating demand in paid social, right? So that's step one, but I think it's also about the companies that people are noticing today are doing really cool and different things. And they're standing out, they're telling a compelling story, or they're tapping into an emotion, or they're, Gong with their Super Bowl commercial, right? Sort of busting through the B2B stereotypes of that's not something you can do. And so how important do you think that is to the mindset around this?
I want to be clear to companies, excluding the Gong Super Bowl ad, everyone is using the exact same channels. It's about how you use them. Everyone's doing LinkedIn. It's just whether or not you're doing it well or not. Everyone's trying to do it. Everyone's doing events. It's just whether or not you're doing it well and people like them, right? And so it's less the channels, the ones that I just mentioned that are working the best for us and a lot of our customers, those are obvious. It's about what you do inside of them that matters. And so I'm not even sure that answered your question.
Well, yeah. And if you have some examples of ways that people can think about doing it, or Nelson has a question.
Right on, Nelson. Come on down.
All right, Nelson, we'll get you on the show. Feel free to ask your question live.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Chris. Hey, everyone. First time here, actually, from across the aisle from sales. So trying to learn a thing or two. So I don't know if my question is quite newbie.
This will be great.
I was wondering if you can help me understand, how do you determine whether or not a buyer is in buying mode or not, and worthy of capture versus creating demand?
And so the reason that I know somebody's in buy mode is because I never force them into a conversion. And then I let them, when they get there, say, hey, we'd love to talk to your sales rep about buying your product. And that's all that we're looking for in our model. It's just very clear that B2B buyers know what to do when they're ready to buy an enterprise SaaS tool. They'll go to the website and convert and try and get in touch with the sales reps, and the company's job to have a very pleasant and efficient buying experience for that executive to go through. And so, and then it's just about what channels, what things do I need to do to influence more people to do that, right? And so I learned this in 2016. I worked with a company. They had four SDRs, but those SDRs were pure outbound SDRs. And so if I generated an inbound lead, it was going to go directly to an account executive that was a field sales rep. And when I was thinking about running like a lead gen model, what I did was I ran the lead gen model. I collect 10 leads and then I called them myself. And then when I called them myself, I was like, if I'm Brandon in the Pittsburgh territory, there's no way I want to talk to this person. And so I just excluded that as a lead source. And as I kept doing that, I was like, wow, the only people that really I want to give to our sales reps are the people that either ask for a quote, ask for a demo, or do a contact us that says, hey, can I talk to your sales team? And so when it was just like having empathy for a sales rep of like if I was in the sales rep's shoes, would I want to call this person? Would it be a good use of my time if I went to a meeting and I drove 3 hours for it? Would it be a good use of my time, or would I be pissed at marketing for sending me a shitty lead? Right. And so that's just the way that I look at it because I spent a lot of time with the sales team at that company. I have a huge empathy for the work that goes into sales, the amount of time that marketing wastes of sales by sending them junk. Like I get that stuff. And so I feel like when marketing's operating well, alignment actually becomes very easy. It's the organization's job to allow marketing to do marketing well, and the alignment sort of solves itself.
Would it be fair to say then that capturing demand might be a bit confusing, because it's more when a salesperson thinks of it, it's an outbound motion, like you're doing the lead gen model and you're trying to get their numbers in the emails to like pull them in. Whereas I think from what it sounds like, it's just a constant state of generating demand until the point that the buyer basically knocks on the door.
But there are core strategies to when a buyer's knocking on the door to capture them as efficiently as possible, right? So a buyer might be knocking on the door and they're looking for the generic whatever this software does, right? And so if they're looking for the generic software, then we should be able to show up first in a Google ad and show up first in SEO, get them to our website, have a very strong value proposition, give them an easy path to convert, move them into a sales rep as efficiently as possible, get that routed follow up, direct calendar book, whatever you want to do. That's capture demand, right? And then there's other channels where people are looking to G2, Capterra. Like you could argue that some like plays off of intent data could be capture demand strategies, right? And then, so there are, and this is like more on the marketing side, not the sales side, right? So it's like, it sort of ends when the sales process begins, in my view, at least for like the way that we're looking at it here. And so marketers don't spend a lot of time. They wait for people to say, I'm looking for this software, as opposed to trying to just get those people. That's table stakes. The people that are looking for us, they should be able to find us and convert, right? But then I need to go out and say, how do I get more people to move through that flow? And when I get more people to move through that flow, they're not looking for the generic software. They're looking for our brand, right? And that's the ultimate goal. And then as more people start doing that, because if you're out there talking about your value proposition, the pain points that you solve, different things like that, and you do it consistently, you do it well, the people that are seeing that content are more likely to see the problems in their business that you're talking about, because they have an awareness to them. And then they have the awareness to them and they say, oh, and they've seen 20 ads that help them figure out that, or organic content, whatever, that help them figure out that this was a problem and figure out that it was solvable. And they just come to you instead of, and most people spend all their time with like the people in capture, and they fight over a small amount of buyers that are not loyal to any single brand. And it's way easier to win way before that and have more buyers come through being loyal to your brand rather than fighting over people that are brand agnostic.
Gotcha. And one last question. Sorry to monopolize.
It's awesome.
I figured it was easier to join this and get questions answered rather than just keep messaging you on LinkedIn to no avail. But I was wondering, so I remember a little time ago, you had some beef with intent data, and it sounds like the type of intent that you respect or think is worth capturing is when they're specifically going after like your brand and not just the category. So in your case, it'd be Refined Labs, super duper marketing, and not like marketing consultancy.
I wouldn't say, I don't think that's a true recollection of how I feel. So on the intent, it's cool. We'll clarify, it'll help people, right? And so on the intent data side, There are some pros to using it that I like using it to activate outbound feels like a good, better motion than downloading a bunch of ebooks or sourcing regular contacts. Like it's going to be incrementally better, maybe a little bit, right? But when it comes to, again, like those people are you either set your intent data way too wide and you're calling people that are irrelevant, or it's a bunch of false positives, or you set your net too narrow. And again, you're just fighting like vendor 3 or 4 inside of a group of people, as opposed to just winning at the beginning and not needing the intent data at all. And so I think that there are pros. The main pro is giving a sales development team something better to do, which allows marketing to not have to generate a bunch of low intent leads. Like that's why that's the best use case for intent data that I see right now. But it's almost like it's very separate. The thing that I like to clarify for people is that there's intent data, which is stuff on the internet that people have continuously repackaged about what IP addresses are doing stuff on the internet that map back to an account. And when you're doing that, it's normally an enterprise account. And so you're never going to know who it is. It could be the janitor that's on some random website that has a keyword in it that matches what you're looking for, and you have a huge false positive, versus declared intent, which means a buyer comes to you and says, hey, I want to buy. And so that's what I try and exclude. Like I focus a lot more of my energy getting more people to declare intent than try and like guess around intent data.
Thank you very much.
You got it. Yeah, great questions. It's good stuff to clarify.
I've got a whole lot more, but I'll hold off for now.
Yeah, we'll see you back next week, or maybe later in the episode. Who knows? We'll see. Cool. So, you got more?
Building on the intent, there was a question that someone threw in the chat. Has anyone had success combining intent data with display programs to drive awareness in key accounts? What say you?
Me?
Yeah.
No. No, the answer is no. So like we have, like, if you look at if you separate the data source and the channel, then on the display side, like there are far better channels to do stuff in than display. That's just like the most clear that I can say. People turn on display, let Google do its thing, and drive a bunch of shit. And in general, I want everyone to think on this Zoom, when is the last time that you've seen a programmatic banner ad and bought something later? Zero. Nobody even sees them anymore. And so it's like, that's the challenge that I have. And it's built because ABM vendors are able to target there. And so it's the value prop is that. And so anyway, what we've done is we've taken intent data streams from Trust Radius, G2, Bambora. I think there's one other one in the set. We've tried a lot of different intent data providers in 6 Sense and a lot of different filters. And we've taken those audiences and we've pulled them out and we've run account based with job title targeting on top of it on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, to very little success overall. And when I say very little success, when you compare it to just targeting the accounts and the job titles without the intent data, that stuff works better. It works better just going in there natively and saying, hey, I want to target these types of companies and these type of people, and I don't need the intent data stream, and you have more scale and it works better. And so the one instance where I have seen it be successful, what I would deem successful, is 6 Sense into LinkedIn on top of job titles, and you get a lower cost per demo, but you only get a couple demos because there's not a lot of accounts in that pool. And so like if you want 2 or 3 demos for $400 instead of $500 by using that $100,000 tool, then go ahead. But I just haven't seen enough, and I've tested this in quite a bit of detail. I haven't seen enough to be like, people should do that. I think you can get most of it done on your own.
I'm gonna pop back to the agenda.
Yeah. Cool. So we are moving into topic 2, which is how to assess the current state of your marketing with data. And so we do this for companies. We help companies, but I think there's been many people that have like listened to the things that I talk about when I say this segment and gone back into their company and looked at the data and presented it and gotten a promotion, got a new project to work on. Like, because if you actually go and look at it, it builds a ton of credibility for you to be able to look at it at this level of detail and look at it from the lens of a CFO or CEO, not a marketing manager or a marketing director or director of demand gen or whatever you are. Okay. And so the process to do this is to first start in the CRM. And so inside of the CRM, you're going to have a bunch of different data. For the purposes of this talk, we are only looking at net new deals. That's it. So no expansion, no upsell, like getting new customers in the door. Okay, so you're going to filter out to just the net new customers that I closed in the trailing 4 quarters, trailing 4 full quarters. And then you're going to take all of that data and you're going to segment it by the top level source. The top level source is going to tell you, was it sales sourced? Was it marketing sourced? Was it partner sourced? If you have a separate source between sales and BDR, then was it BDR sourced? And you're going to have the group of that. So then you're going to be able to see out of all of the net new revenue, what percentage of the deals did marketing contribute to that source? And what percentage of revenue did marketing contribute to that source? That will give you a pretty decent sense just at that about what's going on. We're going to go a lot deeper, but that'll give you a decent sense. Some companies are going to have 5%. Some companies are going to have 75%, and potentially even more than that, and anything in between. And so there's a lot of things that would say whether or not your number is good or bad, right? Like I've seen companies that have 5%, but they're just terrible at tracking, and marketing is actually contributing 30. And then there's a lot of, marketing only has 5%, but marketing only gets 3% of the commercial budget because it's a sales driven company. And so there's situations like that too. So anyway, you get a general sense of, okay, what's marketing contributing to revenue over the trailing 4 quarters? And then you're going to take that bucket from marketing, right? So I'm going to siphon off all the marketing deals. And then I'm going to, oh my gosh. Let me just turn my notifications off. I just got some stuff. And then I'm going to filter the close won deals by primary campaign source. And I'm going to, again, look at it in a pie chart. Primary campaign source should tell you where that lead came from in Salesforce if you have like a decent marketing and sales operation setup. And so you're going to be able to look and see out of the $1 million that marketing contributed net new revenue last year, that was 20 deals. How did those deals actually get sourced based on however our attribution is set up, which is typically last conversion point? I think it's the best way to set it up is last conversion point, which would be like demo, ebook download, webinar attendee, trade show lead, that type of stuff. You can get a sense about the people that are closing, where are they coming from? And that'll give you incredible insights right there. So you have that. And then if you're running like certain different marketing programs, you can then look at every single individual program and compare it against leads, qualified opportunities, close won deals, close won revenue, lead to win rate, average deal size, sales cycle length. And you can break all of those different things out, and you'll find like potentially our trade show leads take 3 times as long to close. Our ebook downloads win at 0.1%. Our demo requests are the shortest sales cycles, the highest win rates, and contributed 90% of the revenue that marketing sourced last year. Whatever you find, you'll get interesting data. I've done this enough times to recognize patterns, and there's some of them that I just laid out for you. And so if you're running specific marketing tactics that you personally might think don't work, this would be a great way to show your company that it's really not. And so, easy example I did in 2016, we were spending $1.2 million a year to build 11 trade show booths and sponsor conferences. And so I went through in Salesforce and I looked at all the trade show leads, and then I analyzed how many we closed and how much revenue we got against how much spend, and was able to go back to the company and say, this is how much we spent, $1.2 million. This is how many net new customers we got. This is our customer acquisition cost to doing it. We're over here acquiring customers for 10 times less. Can we stop spending 1.2 million, maybe drop that to 300K, and then we can take $900,000 and go get more customers for 10 times less. And so that can help you put together your story about certain tactics. You noticed what I said. I didn't ask the company to stop doing trade shows. I just asked them to put more scrutiny over which ones that they do. I knew that there was a couple important ones. It was not the battle that I was going to fight. And so I just scrutinized the ones that were like on the fringe, that were not helpful, that I went to, that I knew were driving an impact, where I sat in the booth for 3 days and talked to 4 people. And so that's one of them. A lot of people that are like, if you're in SaaS, the Google, LinkedIn paid lead gen model is where I would encourage you to look, because there's a lot of digital money being spent there that and I know because I've done this in enough companies, if redirected to a different strategy, would dramatically change the results. And so on LinkedIn, if you're running webinar attendees, which in some cases I actually recommend, as long as there's not a sales cadence behind it, or ebook downloads or straight get a demo ads or anything conversion based in LinkedIn, you're going to have the tracking on LinkedIn. And then you can go into Salesforce and say, out of all the people that I have that I just captured as leads over the past 12 months that have LinkedIn UTMs, how many of those people became customers? How many of those, the accounts that those people work at, became customers, if you want to even look at it at that level of detail? And then you'll be able to get your answer. If it's a high lead volume model, I also recommend trying to estimate or quantify how much sales team's time is being wasted on leads that don't close, because that's a very big hidden cost that companies don't see, because they're like, we got 30 salespeople, we got to keep them busy, as opposed to we have 30 salespeople and they're very unproductive and maybe we should just have 12. And so sometimes you can help people get there too. And then you could do the same thing on Google Direct. Most companies are running captured demand strategies in whatever channel. So you're going to have direct tracking on all of them, and you can do the exact same process on every channel. Calculate lead to win, calculate especially customer acquisition costs and customer CAC payback period. And it's going to quickly tell you which things to shut off and which things not to. If you're in Google, you can break that down based on the campaign, based on the ad group. You can look at the keyword level. You can start to really figure out where the efficiencies are. Companies waste a ton of money on Google ads. Ton of money gets wasted on Google ads. And when you put all of that back together and you look at it, when you have all of that, you're going to say, we're going to stop doing these 4 things. And we're going to do these couple things that are working. We're going to do more of them. And then we have all this money left over, which will most likely be, depending on your, like if you're a, growth stage SaaS company, it's going to be somewhere between $50,000 and like $2 million that you're going to be able to recoup, that you can then go do something else with. Because if you assessed it, you would realize that it's actually completely unproductive to keep spending it that way. And then you can build your story, you can build your strategy, you can present it to your CMO. If you're a CMO, you can present it to the rest of the team. And then you can start to go from there. But the thing is to literally use your business data, and I try and just present it to executives. I don't have an opinion about it. I'm just like, here's what's happening. Do you think this is good or not? And so I find that process to be incredibly helpful. I've been doing it for 5 years, and now do it ongoing with a lot of other companies. And 100 million ARR companies, executives get fascinated when I show them what's happening with their $1 million a year they spend on LinkedIn ads. And so, any questions, Megan?
Nelson threw out a couple of great ones.
Yeah,
that could maybe keep you going.
Okay, let's do it.
Giving some response. Nelson, you can come back on. We all like you.
He's gonna get all his questions in tonight.
Nice one. Yeah, I got a whole list on one screen of them. So just scattershot. The one I recently asked was, I guess from the sales world, I often think the dichotomy of inbound marketing versus outbound marketing and associate
No,
SDRs with outbound. Yeah, that's probably totally wrong. And maybe you want to clarify.
I think I see it different than everybody else. I think that's just the core, I don't see the difference between like inbound marketing and outbound marketing because I think about it from the buyer's perspective, not what I'm doing. Okay. And so, like an inbound at all is somebody that comes in for a buyer, like an inbound lead comes in and says, hey, I want to talk to your sales rep. I don't care if they came through a LinkedIn ad or an outbound email or whatever. The thing that I split for people that other people don't split is I don't consider like outbound teleprospecting to be marketing. That is sales. And so I just like, I set like a line in the sand where like, if you're doing outbound actions with the intent of getting a meeting, I consider that sales. It's transactional. It's like, I have an objective to do that. And so I just don't, I don't think about inbound, outbound, because the way that people think about I think HubSpot is people who actually like split this up, which is like outbound is the shouting and inbound is like the magnet, right? But I talk to enough companies that are working on their magnet inbound and getting SMB deals that are too small, that are unqualified, and they get 2 million visitors to their website a month and none of them want to buy anything. And so like there's a shift that needs to go on, and then they're over here like, we're not going to go and shout, we're inbound, right? Like, and so I think there's just like a mindset shift that people need to make about how people discover products today that's different than in 2007 when HubSpot built their inbound model. And so yeah, I think I just define it differently than most.
I think that's super helpful. Thank you for clarifying that. And then to that end, what do you now say about the role of SDRs? I think I've seen a lot where you're saying that the role should be changed. So what role, if any, do they play?
So when I think about this idea, a lot of people, when they consider a role change for an SDR, they take what they have right now and they think about what else that person could be doing. And when I do, I say, I have a blank slate. I'm not going to, there's no constraints that exist on the talent level or the experience of the person that I have right now. And if I was going to redo business development completely, what would I do? And so my hiring profile would be dramatically different. The skill sets that person would have would be dramatically different. How they got measured would be entirely different. The activities that they did would be very different. And so that's sort of the difference here. Like I would be hiring people that are similar to my buyer, that are interested in trying to build like communities, that are interested in engaging with people, that can provide true value because they've done that person's job before. And so like, those are the things that I think business development should evolve into, but it starts with the talent profile that company hires for is not someone that usually can do what I just said. And so in order to sort of like have someone do something different, you would have to start over. Otherwise you'd have the wrong person doing a different job. You'd have the wrong person doing the right job. And it's a blanket statement, right? I know there's awesome SDRs out there. I know, especially SDRs that sell into sales, there's plenty of people that are awesome. But when I'm just looking at it like across the board, as a like objectively as a business leader, I would just like look for a different skill set.
And then lastly, I don't know if you have any off the top of your head, some average metrics. So when you're looking at how your approach to demand gen, versus like the traditional SDR lead gen approach, like do you have some ballpark? So when you're talking to CEOs, you're like, let's look at percentage of revenue. Let's look at CAC and time to payback and win rate and sales cycles. Like, do you have some from all the companies that you've seen?
Yeah. I mean, if you just literally like build the model, like we do an exercise with companies called split the funnel. And so we split the funnel to their low intent lead gen leads and their high intent demo conversions. And we look at the conversion rates and the volume and then calculate, you can extrapolate out cost to that and understand what the customer acquisition cost between those two are. And when you shift the model, the blended customer acquisition cost should get reduced by at least 33%. And so like and if you build the model just like straight up based on the metrics that I normally see, the differences can be 5x higher customer acquisition cost on a pure lead gen model that's winning at 0.1, 0.2% with a lot of SDR resources that are unproductive. And when you have lower ACV deals, your CAC paybacks are going to be untenable unless you can raise a ton of money. And so like I see 3 to 5 year CAC paybacks on that play in early stage companies. And it's just not there's a better way to do it.
Thank you.
You got it.
Wow, Nelson, great job. You could
Yeah.
probably be the new co-host.
Getting stuff going. Megan's looking for an out.
No, never. I've got a couple questions that were submitted in advance. You want to jump to that, or do we still have a third agenda topic?
I got the third agenda, but let's go to a couple questions. I'll pop back to this one.
For that. Michaela, I wanted to bring you on to ask the question. You submitted a couple great questions that had more context, so I'd love to bring you on so you can ask live. Just unmuted you.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good to see
Michaela.
you.
Good to see you.
Good morning.
Where are you?
Good night. Yeah, so I just listened to the episode from last time where you talked about subject matter experts and creating content for organic channels. And my first question was kind of like, do you see any differences between social selling and influencer marketing? Because to me, you kind of have to be a thought leader and influencer to sell socially. And that social selling is kind of like a B2B word to rephrase a B2C concept, and kind of like use that content that your social sellers are producing to post on the organic channels. So that was my first question. Yeah,
it's a solid question. I might need to come back to you because there was a couple of questions in there, and so I'll just see if I get through it. So on the social selling point, like I don't consider what I do to be social selling. Like I believe social selling was something that was packaged in the early days of LinkedIn that involved connecting people, sending them outbound messages, like with a prescriptive way to engage with their content with the main intent of trying to get someone to buy your stuff and do sales. Like that's not my approach, right? And so do you want to sell stuff on social? Like, yeah, like there's definitely ways to sell it. And then I also split it between like there's a core difference to me between like what I do, which I consider to just be content marketing with effective distribution, versus influencer marketing, which would be me partnering with somebody else in order to take advantage of the credibility and trust and audience size and distribution that they have, right? Yeah. And so like influencer to me is leveraging somebody else's audience trust, and then mine is just content marketing with effective distribution is how I think about it. Because like I'm not engaging with people's content so that they buy something from me, or that so that I can send them a message after I like their post three days in a row, or so that I can send them a message. Like that's not my intent. And so my intent is to be the best person that people want to listen to on LinkedIn, which builds trust and credibility. And when people listen to the stuff that I do and they try it and it works better than the stuff they were doing before, I get more credibility and they tell somebody else, which leads people to think that I'm credible and consider my company. That's the strategy.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. And my second question was, well, for now in the company that I work for, they're rolling out this social selling training where we're being trained on how to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator and promoting the salespeople. And here I'm a little bit concerned that now the salespeople will just go off completely on LinkedIn and start, posting random stuff about the hardware and the products that we sell right now. But here, what I had in mind is to, more or less establish them like as influencers more. Maybe that's the wrong word then. But like how would you tackle this
So
and make sure that like more than social selling and yeah.
what's your role there? Marketing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Digital marketing.
Yeah.
What do you call it? Digital marketing.
Yeah. So if I was in your shoes, I would spend zero amount of my mind share thinking about what the sales reps are posting on LinkedIn. Like, just let them do their thing. If you feel like you can help them, then do it. But in my view, it's a distraction.
Yeah.
And so I would just kind of sort of like exclude that for right now, because what you need to do is you need to prove that the channel can work, and you need to model the behavior that the sales rep should be doing. And then when the channel starts to work and they see it work because of what you're doing, they will start to adopt that behavior because you've shown them the way. Right. Yeah. So instead of show, don't tell, when in some of those instances. And then you need to think about, is there somebody in your company that needs to be the face of the company through a personal profile? Ideally, somebody that has held the job title of the person that you're trying to influence to buy something, right? That's the ideal, or the CEO. And so if you can get that person, you can build the personal profile around that. And I would just put that person in situations where they can demonstrate their expertise, a live Q&A, and a one-on-one talk that gets recorded with another person that's an expert that is an influencer, right? And so those are the things that I would work on. I would build it as a separate stream that's a marketing stream, because, you know, the sales thing, it's probably a distraction for you, but honestly, they might find something, like, and so that's the way that I would recommend to approach it.
Cool. Thank you. That makes sense.
Cool. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We have a lot of chatter about Facebook targeting. And I know you mentioned were you going to dive a little bit deeper into like the paid social process?
Yeah, why B2B companies need to prioritize creative like B2C companies do. Which is an interesting one. And so this is purely based on the data that we're getting by creating demand in paid social channels across 25 B2B SaaS companies. That's where this is coming from. It's not coming from my wish that companies would be human to human versus human to business or whatever people are talking about. It's just pure insights about doing this at a lot of different companies. The creative matters deeply to whether or not you're successful at creating demand. How good the picture is, what the words say, how it's targeted, how things are explained. Do you understand your customer well enough to message in the language that they use? How many variations do you try to see whether or not which one's going to work the best, which ones don't work? Like, there's so many variables in here in order to, how do I get someone's attention? How do I get them to consume the message? How do I make sure that the message resonates? Does it drive the outcome that I want? And so I just find that B2C companies typically, perhaps because it's a more marketing driven place, like in most, and can't be all, there's definitely B2C with the sales rep, but a lot of B2C, that marketing is responsible for getting the customer all the way to the sale, which is different than B2B. So I think B2B companies need to start thinking about marketing as if marketing needs to get someone all the way to the sale, not to a lead status. And when we're running these experiments on paid social, and we use a heavy amount of creative, everything works better because you have more variations to test against. And so part of it is volume. B2B companies are not built to sustain volume of creative, and they need to be in the future, because if something is working, like what we do on LinkedIn with my video, like if I didn't maintain that volume, if I spent a month making a video, if I just did a video a month instead of a video a day, I wouldn't be here right now. The volume matters. You get better faster, you learn faster, you have more options so that one of them becomes the thing that takes off. Like, I post a lot of different videos on LinkedIn, and occasionally one goes for 1,200 likes, but most of them end up at somewhere between 200 and 400. But I give myself more chances to get the one that a bunch of people that don't know about me see. And so the volume thing is something that's foreign to B2B companies that they really should think about adopting. The next thing is about the copywriting. I believe that the copy in the creative is the number one variable to whether or not your ad works in driving the outcome that you want, whether you're going to measure that on click-through rate, whether you're going to measure that on lead gen form, whether you're going to measure that on influenced website demo conversions that happen later. In any of those paths, the words, I believe, make the most difference to whether or not it's successful. And so when we test and we run a month of creative to someone, we're typically testing at least 9 different ways to say something. And so people don't think about it this way in B2B. They take one video with one headline and drop it in LinkedIn and hit $10,000 this month, go, and never check it, never monitor frequency, never see if the audience is saturated, never look at the result, and just be like, oh, this is our media spend. I'm just going to buy it and we'll check what happens at the end. And within $50 or $100, you'd be able to see whether you'd get clear insights about whether or not it was going to help you move the needle. And when you only have one piece of creative, the reason that they have to hit $10,000 and go is because they don't have anything to swap it to. But when you have 27 versions of it, you can say, okay, this one doesn't work, so I can just stop that one. We still have 26 more. Then you go through a process more. Okay, these 4 don't work. I'll stop those 4. And you get down to the clear winners and the creative side, and you can work through that. But in general, it comes down to valuing the creative as much as you value the placement of the media, which is something that B2B companies don't do usually. They value the ad. They value being able to get in front of somebody, not the words, not the picture, because they're so focused on just getting someone to fill out their form, and that becomes the success metric, as opposed to did this move someone closer to having an affinity for my company, considering my product, understanding a problem that we solve, whatever your goal in a marketing campaign is. And when you think about it at that level, you just have a fundamentally different approach to creative. And so this one is something that I don't talk about a lot. I imagine maybe some of the OGs have some questions to drop on this one, but I am pot committed on the importance of creative inside of these channels, especially when they are driving demand at high spends. And so that's where I sit on this topic.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a few questions from a few folks, a little bit related to this, but getting into some targeting on Facebook and LinkedIn. So Mike, I'm going to bring you on next to ask your question. I'm going to bring on Blake.
Cool.
Mike,
thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Nice to meet you guys.
Hey.
Mike, I guess my question is, if you have budgets less than 20K a month, would you recommend trying Facebook native targeting to target B2B audiences, or without using Clearbit or metadata? I can't talk right now. Or should I just start with LinkedIn just because the targeting on LinkedIn is so much better for B2B?
It's a great question. Who are you selling to?
Well, I'm recently unemployed, but I used to sell to product marketing, QA. Yeah.
Okay. Product marketing at any company, or at companies that are only between 300 and 600 employees, or what?
We targeted 200 employees and above.
I haven't tried Facebook native job title targeting lately because it's not very good. And so you could try and see if there's a product marketer job title. And if you're lucky to have that job title in there and you don't have strict company size requirements or industry requirements, then you could give it a shot. But if you're, and how much did the product cost? Let's go through that part of it too.
ACV, it was 100.
100K or $100?
Yeah.
100K.
100K.
Great. Okay, great. That sounds awesome. 100K deal. So you have $20,000 in media. I would try like $1,000 on native targeting on Facebook just to feel it, like just try it. And then I would run heavy on LinkedIn. I know that LinkedIn targeting product marketing, content marketing titles works. I know that it works, right? It's all about does the product fit? Do you message it appropriately? Do you target appropriately? And do you understand those people? Like, it works. I would try a little bit on Facebook just to see. And then I would obviously cover Google search with whatever the Google channel will allow that makes sense for a customer acquisition cost standpoint. And that's how I would allocate the 20K budget. I would think about introducing a targeting tool when there's when you know that you're going to be able to get Facebook to work, and there's a significant amount of money going into that's going to drive a lot through, right? And so based on your question, I didn't feel that. And out of the two channels, in my experience, I would lean heavier into, I think that at a 20K budget, you could do most of that inside of LinkedIn with just a lot of creative variations. And then if you're able to get LinkedIn to work at a level, then ideally you have some results to show for it then. And then you could potentially justify a tool and expanding another 25K a month to put on Facebook in addition to what's happening on LinkedIn, or maybe you scale LinkedIn more. Like at 100K ACV deals, like a lot of companies don't think about their deal size against their advertising spend. And they think about it like it's some like magical gold where we have 100K deals that we're struggling to sell with our sales team at a rate, but we're going to spend $1,000 a month on marketing, and that's going to drive all of the leads. And so the thing that I do first to try and help companies set their advertising targets is I challenge them to calculate their outbound customer acquisition cost. So what is that at a 100K deal at certain companies? Like that could be $50,000 to $150,000 to get that customer through an outbound motion. And so then you say, okay, well, we want to spend $20,000 a month on LinkedIn. And so if we did as good as your outbound channel, it would take us 2.5 months of advertising to get one lead that would likely become a customer. If we did as good as the outbound channel at the lower threshold of that span. And so do I believe that you could get a customer with $20,000 advertising expense against a $100,000 ACV deal with just LinkedIn? Yeah, I do. I think you could probably get 1 or 2 customers there per month with that spend. But it's about setting the expectations right? Because like maybe your executive team with a $20,000 budget expects you to get 10 customers at a 2K advertising customer acquisition cost. So it helps marketers try and like triangulate what's happening right now in other ways to get revenue. How much are we spending? If we like set conservative goals, how many customers would we get? Does that align to executive expectations? Is an interesting kind of process to go through, because sometimes I feel like executives don't have a clear sense about their total customer acquisition cost and have an unrealistic expectation of what an advertising channel would do relative to any other way of getting revenue.
Cool. That makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. Happy to help.
Chris, I've got 2 follow-up questions from the chat. If the ACV was 15K instead of 100K, does your position change on that last example we had?
I don't think so. Not recently. So my confidence in certain titles on LinkedIn has gotten higher recently. So I product marketing, I'm confident that it would work, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is that being able to take CPMs down to run our strategy, not a lead gen strategy where it's like a fixed $50 cost per lead and pretty much a fixed win rate off of them, but running our strategy at $80 CPM versus $20 CPM on LinkedIn is a dramatic difference. So we've been able to move that down for product, marketing and sales into the $20 to $30 CPM range, which makes it relatively similar from a cost standpoint against Facebook. And so if there's a limited budget and there's certain targeting requirements, I'm going to lean into LinkedIn more. And if there's scale things or unique job titles that might be harder to get on LinkedIn, or I'm using Facebook for scale. Like when it works, you can spend $100,000 a month and get a consistent, repeatable output from it every month. And so that's what I'm sort of using Facebook for. And I'm using LinkedIn for narrow, like I'm going after product marketers. I don't have a huge budget. I need to be more productive and more thoughtful about the amount of creative that I put in there so that it makes more of an impact, not just pick one piece and just put it in and hope it works. And so at lower budgets, the creative becomes your secret weapon. Because if you don't have a lot of money to spend on media, but maybe you have an internal resource that can make 20 different pictures for you. And then out of testing the 20 pictures, you actually find the best one that works 5 times better than any other one.
I love it. One more quick one before I bring on Blake. My new friend, Kaylee, how are you calculating outbound CAC? You mentioned that a few times. Can you review that?
Yeah. So when I calculate customer acquisition costs for when comparing inbound to outbound, I exclude the actual salesperson, right? So this is just the amount of money spent to get the person to the sales rep that eventually became a customer, and I exclude commissions and salaries of that person because it just makes it more objective between the two ways and more clear comparison between the two methods. And so on the outbound side, you could literally just look at it'd be easier to look at it over a longer period of time, not just a month. But if you just had a month and like all of the deals had come to fruition, like all of the deals have won or lost, because it's going to be a lagging metric based on your sales cycle length. And so I would go in and I would say, okay, and maybe our sales cycle is 90 days. So I'm going to wait 180 days. And then I'm going to go back to what that was. Let's just pretend it was June of last year. I'm going to say, okay, in June for outbound, we had 10 SDRs that were doing this. And each of those SDRs, for sake of just round numbers, was $100,000 loaded in San Fran. And so that would be whatever. I'm trying to do the math in my head now, but it got complicated. Those people cost that much money, and we got this many people out, and so it was the total cost divided by the number of people that were sourced through that system that became a customer, which might be 4, which would give you the acquisition cost per those customers. And then if you wanted to make it even more objective, because deal sizes can flex, and to be frank, deal sizes are typically larger outbound, that you would include the deal size and then calculate customer acquisition cost payback period, which would give you a more objective comparison for inbound and outbound that normalizes for deal size.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze in one more great question on this topic before
just keep it going. Yeah,
we bring on some folks. Do you change the type of creative that you're using for Facebook or LinkedIn? Does one type work better on Facebook than like LinkedIn?
I see patterns, but I don't want people to think that this is like true across the board. And so the patterns that I'm seeing is that the carousel format works better than the static image format on LinkedIn. I'm seeing that in several different companies. I don't even make the static versions anymore. I just go straight to carousel. We see video work very well in LinkedIn, and we've seen video work better in LinkedIn than in Facebook. That could be targeting. That could be a lot of different reasons. So don't quote me on that. Test it for yourself. On Facebook, like I tend to like the static image placements more than the carousels. So static image story, static image feed. And then if you had the creative capabilities to do it, being very thoughtful about how you could use the 15 seconds of an Instagram story better than just a picture would be the next place that I go. But inside of Facebook and Instagram, like a lot of people know, I'm leaning a lot more into the view. I don't even look at clicks anymore. Can you believe that? Like I barely look at even clicks anymore. And so I'm leaning so much into the view because I see the behavior happening. I've seen it happening from myself and my own buying behavior for the last 5 years. I see it happening in the data across a lot of different companies. People are seeing the ad, consuming the message, and that is my opportunity. I have way more opportunities to tell a story there than on my landing page that only 0.2% of people are going to click to, or 0.5%, or whatever the benchmark is. So I can tell my story to 200 times more people if I tell the story in the feed versus on the landing page. And so that's the approach that I take. And so it gives me a ton more flexibility to say, what am I going to be able to say? I know this whole landing page is over here with a bunch of copy and stuff, but what am I able to say right now in a picture and get a message across in 3 or 4 seconds? And then they're in my audience tomorrow. And then the next day I can put together another picture and I can do it again. I can tell them something else. So it was interesting. I was talking to somebody that might want to work with us the other day, and I was explaining that to them, and they were like, huh, so what you're kind of doing is like a paid social nurture, huh? And I was like, huh, I think you got something. That kind of is what we're doing, actually. We don't, instead of having 1,000 email addresses and sending them emails that they don't read, I'm going to take the 300,000 people that match your job titles, and I'm going to nurture them all, and I don't need their data, and I can do it every day. And so that's the way that I have broken it down. And so I just, it's funny, I just went on that rant, but so leaning more into the view has been like one of the biggest insights for me this year.
All right, we're on fire tonight. Blake, you're up.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, good.
Well, I don't know if I'll inspire a rant here with this one. Hey, how's it going, Chris?
Hope so.
So custom audience question. I know you guys probably don't use them a lot, but I guess that's my question. Do you guys ever use custom audiences with 100,000 contact list uploads, or just are the match rates too low where it's not worth doing for you guys?
On what channel?
Facebook.
I've never found that to be a strong thing to do, because the match rates are often less than 10%, like sometimes even less than that. Like you take an audience, a database of 20,000 people, you might not even have enough people matched to run ads, which is 1,000 minimum. And so I feel like there's so many other alternatives. The one thing that we have done before is we've taken contact lists of customers, or taken the put the pixel on the page after the landing page of their SaaS tool or something, and then use that pixel to exclude people from ads. Like that's the thing that we've tried. But now what we do on LinkedIn is way easier. You can take the account list of whatever you have. So you can pull all those people out, you can pull the accounts, you can get their URLs, and you can exclude that from LinkedIn. So you don't market to customers or whatever exclusions you want, competitors, whatever. And then on Facebook, we just pull the account list out and we use Metadata or Clearbit to get that done. And so we just again, the match rates aren't perfect, but it allows us to just say, we don't want to market to these accounts, and we're going to exclude as many people as the technology allows.
Gotcha. So so you'll use it on LinkedIn, but mostly for the exclusions is what you'll go for.
Yeah. And then there's some it's interesting because I believe that this play started in B2C, where it's a lot more appropriate to use this play. And so in B2C, typically the person that's filling out your e-commerce checkout is going to use the same email that they use on Facebook. It's going to be the same. That's the first step. So your match rates are going to be way better. The second step is that if you're selling a B2C product, you can pull out your 10,000 customers and build a lookalike audience and just let it roll, right? And that in most SaaS, and I'm not going to say all, but in most SaaS instances, that play is going to be very inefficient, and you're just going to waste a lot of money. And so, yeah.
So would the only case where you would see that working, because you talked about the inefficiency there, would be if it's a large TAM, so something that everybody could in theory use, like a project management tool.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something like that, where that's something where that play could work. You'd still have the match rate issue if it's business email versus personal email. But over time, I think the algorithm would get smart enough to do that. And I've watched companies try that strategy, and they measure it based on conversions. And it's funny. In fact, the exact same thing that it happens in a sales-led motion happens in a product-led motion. It's just less expensive. And so because you don't have salespeople wasting their time, but the same thing happens. You let the algorithm run, you have thousands of people sign up on your free trial form, and you get 4 people out of it. And so at that, and then you have to compare again. It's more direct. It's this is how much we spent on advertising. We didn't have any sales expenses. This is how many people we got out. But I find a lot of companies that do that score their marketing team on trial signups and score their growth team on PQLs or something later funnel, which is essentially just like a marketing and sales alignment issue created with two different functions.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, hey, Chris, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Megan.
Yeah.
Thanks,
good to see you, Blake.
Good seeing you, man.
Jess had a good follow-up question. What minimum spend do you need to get a benefit or justify like the metadata or Clearbit purchase?
I think that sort of depends on your unique situation. If I was a director of demand gen at a company and my media budget was $50,000 a month, I would make my media budget $47,000 a month, and I would buy one of those tools. And that's what I would do. Again, it depends on who you're selling to. It depends on how big your total addressable market is. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but generally, that's what I would do. And I think, I don't know this to be true for sure, but I know it to be true for metadata. At least I don't know if Clearbit does this, but metadata siphons off a part of their software where it's just called meta match, which is what we use, which is just the targeting component of it, which is less expensive. And I would imagine that Clearbit does something similar where you just get the targeting component and it ends up being like $2,000 a month instead of like $4 or $5. So that's something to consider as well for people.
Gotta love the classic "it depends" answer. Julia,
sorry people.
Julia's coming on next.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good to have you.
So my question is about retargeting with high intent offers, like a demo request or something. Like, assuming you're getting all of that great content out there, you have this person who visited a product page or something that's product heavy. How would you feel about retargeting with something like, request a demo or like get a free walkthrough, particularly on Facebook is where I'm looking.
So the right answer here is to do it and then track the win rates, track the conversion from lead to SQL or SQO, and then just see. I've done this a lot. What I typically find is that you're going to collect 50 leads. Your SDRs are going to say, hey, these aren't the people that I want to talk to. They, right title, no intent. Right title said, I called them and they said, oh, I don't remember filling out that form, or I've never heard of you before. Those are typically the answers you get when you run this play. But you could, like I said at the beginning, you could do 10 and you could call them yourself and you could see what it's like. That would be a potential recommendation. And what I would expect, I don't know for sure, is that whether it was the retargeting audience or if you just did it to everybody, you would get the same result. Like you would get the same types of answers, whether it was just a small pool of retargeting or you just went after your entire market. The results would be relatively similar, just because my theory on this is it does, like, I get that they hit your website within X amount of days. Some companies use retargeting at 180 days. And so like they got there at day 178 and it's been 178 days since they've been to your website. Like, they're not thinking about you. And generally when they log into Facebook, they're not there. They don't have intent to buy your stuff, which is why the conversion stuff sort of fails. I also think a lot of people outside of marketers don't really know what they're getting when they fill out the form. Right. And so it's like, get a demo, and then the lead form pops up and I'm going in there and I'm like, oh, so all I have to do is just like fill out this information and then I'll be able to watch the video. And then I fill out the information. It says, hey, we'll call you soon. And then I'm like, I don't want to talk to someone. I just wanted to see this video that I didn't understand what was going to happen. And so I think those are some of the behaviors of why it works like that psychologically, but I don't know for sure. The place where retargeting has been doing decent for us is on, retargeting in general is a decent strategy, right? Like in general, what the question is whether it should be conversion based or not. Like that's the question. And so I'll go through a couple of different paths. Like when we're running retargeting, we're just giving people more content that tends to be lower funnel. But again, we're not asking for the conversion. We're just trying to keep the impression going. Another thing to think about is that if you have I've said this a couple of times in comparison to retargeting, where if you have a defined audience, let's say it's 100,000 people that you can sell to, and you have enough of a content engine that you're putting it out enough that you can hit all of those people all the time, then there's actually like not a ton of value in my view to segment between retargeting and cold. And I would just market to the whole audience all the time.
That makes a ton of sense. And I'm guessing that like in terms of like high intent outbound, like for the most part, like what you're going to see the most value and return on is just getting that content out there and then having someone actually come to your website and say like, hey, I want to talk to sales. Like that's basically what you want to do.
That's, yeah, it's just like, I've tried a lot of stuff as a marketer, and it feels simple, but it's the thing that works the best. You know what I mean? And so, and it just, but a lot of people struggle with it because if you're really trying to do that, you need to acknowledge that you're not going to have a complete picture of what's going on. You need to use intuition. You need to put data together across other sources. You need to understand what's going on in the comments or who's liking it. There's things that people get scared of because they're not tangible the way they've been trained to look at them, which makes them not want to do stuff like what I say.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Good question. Great to see you.
Yeah, great questions. Carl, one of our OGs, has a question about a website, I believe. Carl, come on.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Chris.
What's up, Carl? Here to show me up with your camera again, huh?
Yeah. So we launched this website, our website, back in July. We spent quite a lot of money on it, and I came on, but when it was 70% complete. But the thing is, the website's terrible. We can't really do what we want it to do. So like, can't work on Firefox. We have to build custom all the time because the modules won't fit. So it's very inflexible. So, oh, by the way, have you ever been on a CMS where they have a cap or a limit on the number of external views and internal actions that you do? So we have like a limit on how many times our team can actually go in, upload content, you know, create stuff, because there's like a cap. And then if you go over, that's an extra fee. Because I've never been on a CMS that's never done that. This
is so over my head and so much in the details. Like I would never pay attention to something like that. Sorry.
But so, okay. So in the question, like we're now in the process of looking at different vendors, but that's not the question. The question is more of like, so our team doesn't really know what the integrations and features that our website will have. Like, you know, we don't know what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years, and we don't know how the site's going to integrate with our products and so on. So my VP was like, oh, you know what, have a talk to this guy. And, you know, he did digital marketing and he does digital transformations. When I was talking to him, he was talking about going into product visioning, like a full, you know, work with our teams to do this digital transformation. And I remember doing all that stuff back in like the old days. And all I got was like a document that we kind of abided by, but you'll lose it after 3 months because everything changes. And I'm like, we're a B2B SaaS company. Are we complicating it more by going down this path that I'm not sure I'll even follow what the end results is?
I think I would say that most companies overcomplicate and generally overvalue their website. I think that's a fair statement. And so, and when they start to like build a lot around it, it becomes more difficult to actually change and be agile. Like we started our company 2 years ago. We've redone our website 4 or 5 times already, and we're going to redo it again in Q3. Like the ability to be agile and have speed and make changes, I think is the number one thing that companies, I've watched some smart CMOs make, you know, complete new websites within a year cycle, because you're learning so much about how to message the product that you can respond to how people are doing, not put a new hero image on your homepage, like redo the website. And usually in order to redo the website, you need a simple core structure, and then you can have your SEO stuff and things that carry along. And so my recommendation, like our website's most likely going to continue to be like 4 or 5 pages, because like our website is a place where people see whether we're right or not for them and then convert. That's it. And I think people will start to rethink what a website is for, because they think that people are going to come to their website and consume all of the pages, but all of the people want to get that information where they already are. The people never get to the website. And so it's like a website is it just serves a completely different purpose in my view. And the actual like content needs to go in the places where people are.
What's interesting is like our director of brand was saying, oh, you know what? I want to create an experience on the website. I was like, like it's very few websites people go to have an experience. They go to sites to consume info and leave. Like I've yet to be on websites that I just go there and stay there for long periods of time. Like unless it's YouTube, unless it's,
unless
Instagram.
it's a content platform, which is not a business website.
Yeah. And so like, I know there's talk of like, let's make it a content hub, but I'm like, I don't think that the definition of the content hub matches what people are, how people are consuming today.
And before you make a content hub, you should validate that you make good content in channels that are free.
Yeah.
Right. Like before you make a content hub, you should be able to have 20,000 people that are engaged following your LinkedIn company page because you put out content 3 times a day.
Yeah.
But most companies are like, we'll just make this content hub. We have no idea whether or not people like the information or whether it's good or whether we can create enough of it or anything. And we'll just make this thing and stand it up and nobody shows up.
Yeah. And it's funny because then I always get the, hey, can we make this rank? Can we make these pages rank? I'm like, what did you absolutely do to make these pages rank? I don't know. That's your job. And I was like, well, what's the point? And it's one of those things. So yeah, it's really interesting to see, that
I think
hub.
simple websites will be the places where people move forward. I think that some people will go extreme and only have like 4 or 5 pages. Some people might lean into only a homepage. And so I believe that will be a path. Will companies do it anytime soon? I don't think so. Probably take several years before even a small percentage of companies do that. But I think that's what people will start doing.
Yeah, but I can even see it on or like any analytics you see, it's like they're not there for that long. Like that's it, right? And I think the days of you just surfing on the web, it's done. Like there's that, right?
Maybe I don't want to commit to this, but if I have a couple of minutes, I'll take a look. Which is like we have pretty damn good content on our website of like 90-minute videos with me and Gaetano, not on Demand Gen Live, like professionally filmed, talking about stuff. Like we have a lot of those, and I'll go look through and see if anyone's binged more than one video in a session. And I think our videos are good, and I literally think 0 people have done that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Good to see you, Carl.
Thanks, Carl. Katie has a question about a social network that we don't talk too much about on this show.
Never heard you talk.
Drum roll, please.
I've never heard you talk about Twitter in any facet, whether organic or paid, and I'm just interested in what your perspective is on it broadly.
I'm dipping my toe in the water organically on Twitter. So organically, and I'm using it for a different there's certain channels that I just use for a different purpose than others, right? So I'm going into it with like sort of a different mindset than I would on LinkedIn or a podcast or different things. But I'm dipping my toe in the water. I'm in there every once in a while. It's going okay. On the paid side, I think that the targeting's poor. I think that they have an attention issue overall because there's too much stuff going in there. And so I just like, out of all of the channels, Twitter is like, it's a higher than display, but it's low. If I just put it that way. And so like we've never gotten to a place where a customer's spending enough money to fully clear LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube to justify even considering Twitter. So on a paid side, it's just like there's better places to spend your time. Similarly for organic, I just think that there's better places to spend your time, right? And so everyone has a limited amount of time in their day, and I just recommend that if you're trying to do marketing or build an audience or, you know, create content that people like, which eventually leads them to think about buying your stuff, like that there are better places to do it than Twitter today.
Yeah, I said in the chat that I think it's very like personality driven and like B2C focused. And I've also, heard that their targeting is pretty abysmal, which is like intentional on their part. But
like going back to the like the social selling conversation, like if depending on your buyer, like I think that would be a really interesting like social selling mechanism if they were on Twitter, just purely based on engagement as a human, not as a sales rep, right?
Right.
And so I think that could be an interesting play for some people, because you can tweet people that are busy and popular and different things, and a lot of people respond.
Right.
That doesn't like it. I'm starting to get to a place where I can't respond to probably 60 or more % of the LinkedIn messages. I just get too many of them. And so, but I never have my notifications lighting up on Twitter. And so if anyone maybe Nelson wants to try and hit me up on Twitter, because I don't get any DMs there, maybe I'll answer.
For sure. Yeah. It's very, I think like for my impression is that for like thought leader, like being seen as a thought leader in an industry, it's a great place for that. I mean, even like for me as an SEO, having a place where you can like just tweet at Google and be like, hey, what's this thing? Like that kind of access is amazing. And wouldn't happen on something like LinkedIn.
Just the maturity of the platform and how much stuff is in there and how much noise. Like if you started from zero, the same thing goes with Instagram or Facebook or any of them right now. If you're starting from a small place, just the upside is going to be a long road. And there's just I'm trying to think of an example here. You're like trying to get across the country and Twitter over here, like you're on a tricycle. And then there's like LinkedIn over here that's like a rocket ship, and you're like, no, I'm just going to keep riding my tricycle on Twitter and I'll pick up a follower once every year and we'll get there to California eventually. Right. You know what I mean? Like that's what Twitter and Facebook and Instagram organic are like right now.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Gosh, my tricycle analogy was fire.
Very old school.
And the video clip on LinkedIn tomorrow. For it.
Take the rocket ship, not the tricycle. That'll be the headline. Okay, let's go.
This was a good show. You were on fire. We've kind of wrapped up questions. I feel like
great.
This might be a good moment to wrap up the show. Do you have any closing thoughts for the group?
Stay tuned whenever that I'll let you know whenever that Typeform interview came out. We talked for like 2 or 3 hours. Like it was some good stuff, great questions, stuff that person was an amazing interview. This guy, Paul, stuff that I've never talked about before, which I thought would be cool. And so stay tuned for that. If you want to sign up for the Dave Gerhardt event, please feel free. And just great to have you all here. It feels like summer's coming along. Maybe, you know, I'm not hoping for this, but if people have other things to do in the summer because they can go outside and do fun stuff, like I wouldn't be sad if a couple people took a Tuesday off and did something fun. So, but with that said, I love having all of you here, and can't wait to see you again next week. And we'll try and keep the agendas hitting hard.
Good to see everyone. We'll have the Dave registration link out next week, so stay tuned. May 6th, though. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week.
See you next Tuesday.
Bye, everyone.